It is time for episode 6 of Crime and Crochet with Zay. That's me. I am currently working on one of the 3 dreaded slouch hatches. I do hope to be done by tomorrow. And as soon as I get the word that my friend is going on tour, I will let you know so that you can support him, as I'm sure he's coming to a state near you. Now, on the other side, if you give me 5 to 8 minutes, I'm going to tell you about a serial killer that I'm sure you don't know about. And I will reveal his identity at the end of this video. I'm sorry, I'm going to take this off because it's getting snagged on my hat. Okay, so in the intro, would you do me a favor? Would you comment, like, share, and repost this video so that I can bring you more gruesome stories while I crochet my way into your heart? I thank you in advance, and let's get into it. Are you ready? Let's do it. This man was a notorious Mexican-American serial killer active during the 1970s. Born February 7, 1934, in Cotilla, Michoacan, Mexico, his life was marked by early hardships that would later play a role in his criminal actions. His family moved to the United States in the early 1950s, where they settled in California's agricultural region. Now, he grew up in poverty, and from a young age, he worked alongside his family in the fields of California. He eventually became a farm labor contractor, and this position allowed him to employ other migrant workers. I'm sorry, I was counting this stitch, and this is just the life of a crocheter. This particular stitch, I put the stitch marker so that I wouldn't get, thrown off, but at the 10th stitch, I have to do something different. So I have these stitch markers to help me along. So, sorry about that. All right, now let's get back into it. Now, he became a labor contractor. Right. This position allowed him to employ other migrant workers. Now, despite his relatively humble beginnings, he gained a certain level of respect in his community, especially as he took on the position of power over the men who worked for him. Now, beneath the surface of this seemingly successful life, there were deep psychological issues, and he was known to have a strained relationship with his family, and there were also rumors of erratic behavior and about his aggressive temper that began to surface in the 1960s. Now, his criminal activities remained hidden for several years, and it wasn't until 1971 that authorities began to unravel the true extent of his crime. Now, between 1971 and 1973, it is believed that he has at least 25 victims, all men. Some reports that that number could be much higher. Now, his victims were typically migrant workers, many of whom were part of the transient agriculture labor force. So they bounced from place to place, city to city, town to town. So it wasn't out of the norm for their families not to hear from them very often. Now, he lured his victims with promises of work. And once they were alone, he would overpower them. Most of the assaults took place in rural areas near the town of Yuba City, California, where he lived and worked. The victims were often found buried in shallow graves and showed signs of blunt force trauma. Now, what made his case particularly disturbing was the apparent randomness, as they lacked a clear motive. Now, investigators were initially stumped, but a breakthrough came when one of his victims, or his potential victims, I should say, managed to escape and identified him. This led to his arrest in 1973. Now, during his trial, it was revealed that his methods for luring and killing his victims were cold and calculated. He had carefully planned the assaults and disposed of the bodies in remote areas, seemingly without any personal connection to these victims. Now, the prosecution argued that his actions were motivated by a combination of financial gain and personal rage, both perhaps exasperated by his struggle with the fractured identity and social isolation. Now, his defense attorneys claimed that he was mentally unstable, pointing to his history of erratic behavior and psychological issues. They also suggested that he may have been suffering from some form of mental illness, possibly linked to the combination of trauma from his early life and the difficulties with the integration into American society. However, the jury ultimately found him guilty, regardless of that. Now, in 1973, he was convicted of all 25 and sentenced to death. Although his sentence was later commuted to the life in prison after the California Supreme Court Justice ruled that the state's death penalty was unconstitutional in 1976. Things have changed. Now, his case remained a debate throughout the years. Some people question whether he had truly committed all of them, while others argued that his mental state had played a larger role in his crimes than originally thought. His case also highlighted the challenges of policing transient populations, particularly migrant laborers who often were overlooked by authorities and vulnerable to exploitation. Now, in 2019, after spending over 40 years in prison, he was granted a parole hearing. What do you think happened? He was denied release. Okay, he remained incarcerated at the time of his death, or until the time of his death, I should say, at the age of 85 in 2019. His story is one of the profound tragedy and chilling violence. His killings shocked the nation and brought attention to the plight of migrant workers and the difficulties in tracking serial killers among the transient population. His trial and conviction marked one of the darkest chapters in California's criminal history. Now, his case remains a topic of psychological and criminological, that's a tongue twister, criminological studies to this day. His name was Juan Corona May. What do you think? Oh, this is how far I've gotten in the slouch. I really enjoy telling you this story, and it's been fun. So be sure again to like, share, and comment on this post, and I'll see you again on episode 7 of Crime and Crochet with Zay. That's me. Bye for now.